on the show.
Thank you.
If you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, my name is Daniel Mahabir. I am a local real estate agent out here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the owner of the Mahabir Real Estate Group.
So what made you decide to be a realtor?
So prior to getting into real estate, I actually was working at Apple. So I had been I had done everything you could think of there, from selling all of the Apple products on the floor to working within an Apple business division. Did you guys know there was a business division? Yeah. So we sell technology to like other small businesses, to then ultimately having an opportunity to run my own business team. And so through that, I was consistently getting promotion after promotion and really just loving working there. However, there was a feeling in my gut in 2017 that with all these promotions, I'm very thankful, and I feel like I could do this for the rest of my life if I wanted to. However, I'm not going to feel fulfilled. So like ever since I was probably 18 years old, I always wanted to start my own business. And it was at that moment where I realized I needed to make some sort of change. And so after thinking about all the different businesses, real estate was the one where I felt like my skills would translate the easiest to, and I could, as quickly as possible, start making money, right? So
how'd you get that feeling of knowing that you would not be fulfilled in the future? That's interesting that you would recognize that.
I mean, the story can kind of unravel from there. Mm-hmm. So when I was, the business manager position was what I was doing, and they were transforming that into something a little bit different. And so that gave me an opportunity to decide, do I want to stick around with the company or do I want to move on to something different? And so it was kind of like a forced feeling, if I may. But then watching shows like The Prophet with Marcus Lemonis, you know about that show? So watching that show and other shows like it, I've always wanted to have my own business, always. And then that show opened up my eyes to like just what kind of acumen you need to have to be at the level I want to be at. And I knew in order to get there, I just needed to make the first step. So it was forced, and but thankfully I decided to trust my gut, because what happened, Joe, was I told them I was going to stick around when they asked me, "Do you want to stick around? Or do you want to leave?" And I told them, "I'm going to stick around. I'll continue working at Apple with this change that you guys are making." And as soon as I said that, I felt like somebody just smacked me right in the face, and it just didn't feel right. So a couple days of sitting on it, I realized, no, I need to trust my gut. That was it.
So what do you think about starting your own business? And
oh god,
it's a little scary feeling sometimes.
Scary, yeah. I guess scary because unlike a job, you don't have the security, right? So you're writing your own check. You want to sit around and lollygag with your friends and family. That's great, but just keep in mind you're not making money during that time. So there's that aspect of business that could tend to eat away at you. However, I mean, I'm excited. I'm an adrenaline junkie a little bit, so I like the excitement of, when I was building it, am I going to be able to do this or not? To then, how do I build something even bigger? To now, it's how do I really build the ultimate dream for myself and my family? So, I'm very thankful that I made the plunge. Yeah.
What made you decide though to make that drastic of a career change? It's pretty different than tech.
Yeah, it is different and it's not. So in all of my jobs, I was always working with people. So like at Apple, you walk in there, you'll notice right off the bat, every person looks different. They sound different ages, sex, sexual orientation, so on and so forth. And even the clients themselves, right? Everybody has an Apple product. So for me, it was, at the end of the day, yes, I'm selling technology, but that's not what I'm dealing with. My product was actually my customer in front of me. And that's the same thing with real estate, right? Like, getting a chance to sell you guys a house. It wasn't about the house, it was about you guys. And then just telling me what you need and let's find something for you. So it was a drastic decision that I think the more drastic measures were getting away from the 9 to 5, the cushion of a paycheck. I mean, that's probably what the harder pill I had to swallow.
How'd you get into real estate? Like what was that process of, all right, so now what do I need to do to become a realtor?
Yeah. So first off, you have to make the decision, and I think it might take you going a little crazy once you've made that decision. Then it's about signing up for real estate education. So there are quite a few certified schools out here in our state, and let alone any state you go to. You have to meet an education requirement. State of Nevada requires you to do 90 hours of education. They call it pre-licensing. Once you've completed that, you then also test out to prove that you've actually earned the education that you were supposed to get from that. Upon completion, then you actually just sign up for a state and national exam. So it's held at a Pearson VUE Center. You go there, you sit there for up to 4 hours typically, and you get the test knocked out. You pass. You have to pass both. So if you pass one, you fail the other. You got to come back for the other. And then once you've passed both of those tests and you've passed your education, you do some other parts of the process, like get your fingerprints done, fill out an application, and you find a brokerage to align with. And once you've put all those pieces together, you take that package of everything saying, I'm ready to be a real estate agent, take it to the state's division office, give it to them and say, here we go, process my application. In the state of Nevada, you wait 6 weeks while they process that, 6 to 8 weeks. So that's the most frustrating part of your career, just waiting for you to officially become a licensed agent. Yeah.
So what is something that you look for in a brokerage? How does one get involved in that?
You know, I think it depends on a few different factors. So I've had the privilege of also running a coaching program where I teach brand new agents in the business like how to get into production. And so you see the perspective or the different perspectives of these newly licensed agents. Some of them, they come into this business because of what they saw on HGTV, right? Like, I got to flip homes, I want to do that. Others, they come in because they're tired of somebody telling them when to clock in, when to clock out, how much money they're going to make for the rest of their life. And then you have a group of individuals like myself where it's maybe a combination of those first couple of factors, plus like they just want to have a business, right? There's maybe a legacy they want to create, something for themselves. So there are a ton of brokerage options out there, and each one offers its own value. For me, when I got into the business, I knew this was going to be a career, a long-term thing. So obviously, the most important thing for me was who was going to train me how to be in this business for the long haul, right? Like when you're aligning with brokerages, one of the things they'll tell you about is their training. The other things they'll tell you about is their culture, and maybe they'll also tell you about their compensation package. And I didn't really care about compensation. You could have taken 90% of my money. As long as you taught me how to be in this business longer than a year, I'm okay with it. I heard all the stats. 90% of people, they get out of the business in their first 5 years. I don't want to be one of them. This is my forever, so lucky I aligned with the right one. Yeah.
And that's pretty interesting too. And I think a lot of people don't really understand like what all goes into buying a home. So they think, okay, so if I'm buying a home, I can just call that number that's on the real estate sign on the front of the house. But obviously the process is more involved with that. And just letting the listeners know too that you were our realtor and helped us out through that process. So what do you do when you have a new couple like ourselves that does not know a whole lot about real estate or the process? Like how you go about educating them and just walking them through that?
Yeah, you hold their hands and say, hey guys, I have no idea what I'm doing. We're going to figure this out. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
No, this reminds me of a great lesson that one of my first mentors in the business taught me, which was I have to always keep in mind that of the most stressful things that a person can encounter in their life, buying a house and selling a house make up 2 of the top 5 most stressful things a person can deal with. So for me, my first thing is let's take a seat and let's talk about the process. It's an education, right? Keeping you up to date on the process of buying a home, the conditions of the market, so that when you're out there, it's not a cookie cutter way of buying a home. Like for instance, the market you guys bought in, very different from the market that people are buying in today. So we just have to keep all of those expectations around how is the market acting and how should we react and play. And then of course, letting them know about who I am as a real estate agent, because people will ultimately pick who they trust, who they like, maybe who they know, for such a big transaction in their life, right? So that's the first thing is let's just make sure we could sit down, get the expectations out on the table, make sure before we run, let's crawl a little bit and figure out how does this all work? How am I going to win with you? How am I going to lose with you? Okay, now we're ready. Now talk to me about the home, right? And so then the process just kind of lays out from there. Let's figure out the homes. Let's go look at homes. Let's find a house you like. You like this house? Great. I'm going to do my research and I'm going to tell you exactly what it's going to take to get this home. And it's up to you to make the decision if you want to put pen to paper and do that or if you want to do something a little bit different. At that point, I serve as your coach and consultant, right? I tell you this is the way we can do it. Not all my clients will take that advice, understandably so. The ones that do, typically they'll win. The ones that don't, they'll sometimes win, but they might encounter a couple of issues. Maybe they have to go through a couple of learns, right? Of being told no on the house they really wanted before they start taking the advice. Ultimately, though, the whole mission is to get you under contract on a home that you want at the lowest price that you could possibly pay, you know? And once we get under contract on a home, then it's a 30 to 35 day escrow process that you guys are probably familiar with, right? A lot of moving parts. We try to keep you away from those moving parts and take care of it ourselves. And in the moments where we ask for you to do something, it's kind of quickly getting us a statement, getting us a paycheck, getting us this and that so we can keep the transaction moving along so that we could ultimately finish across the finish line, get you into your home.
And you're saying too to make sure that you do not buy a new car if they're checking your credit for your home. I remember you specifically saying that. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, you gotta tell your buyers some of those red flag things, right? Like don't go applying for department store credit cards. Don't go buying the furniture too quickly. Please don't go getting a car. I told you the nightmare story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to go getting cars right when you're about to sign the papers to buy a house. That'll just kill everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
You should tell that story just so our listeners can hear it and get a little bit of a
the best way I could explain it. So you're pre-approved for buying a house, right? So you're ready to rock and roll. We're under contract on a home. So I had these buyers, they're under contract on a home. We're moving through the process and we're at about the 30-day mark. So like I said, from once you're under contract on a home, it's probably 35 days away before it's yours. And at about that 30-day mark, it's time for us to go to the title company's office and sign all of the closing paperwork. Yeah, and you guys remember the stack of papers like that, huge, right? And so we're signing the papers, or I'm sitting there just to make sure I can answer questions for my buyers, husband and wife, signing the papers, coming right to the end. Husband turns to the wife, says, "Honey, wait." And she says, "What happened?" "Well, this is such a big moment in our life. Like we're buying a house. I decided I want to do something special for you." And everybody that wasn't these two, their hearts sank in their chest like, "Oh my God, what did this guy do?" And sure enough, he directs her to the parking lot, and in the parking lot was, guess what? A car with a big old ribbon right on the top, and he's like, "Look, honey," and she's crying, and we're all crying at this point because we realize what just happened, right? He can't get approved for a loan at that point. Got to stop. So the lenders, "Nope, we can't. You are not buying a house today." We had to put a kibosh on it, and ultimately, it's mistakes like that where it could cost people thousands of dollars, and so we don't want to see that happen. Right?
Mm-hmm. It's good too, I think, that people can hear stories like that because it doesn't always seem intuitive. And then a lot of times with whatever career that you have, when you're working that career, things seem like very common sense to you, but it might not actually be common knowledge to an average individual.
Yeah, that's very true. Especially with like for you guys, the complexities of anatomy, right? It's the same thing with us with buying and selling a house, and that there's just so many different things, and the slightest of things that we kind of take for granted in a transaction, if you kind of brush over it, it could lead to massive consequences, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we really appreciate your help leading us through that process. And as far as the process goes, I could tell that you'd spent time refining what you do and really pay attention to it, because you were asking us a lot of questions about like rank this house, what do you think about it, what do you like, what do you don't like. You definitely took that into account almost as if your own like algorithm, and then just showed us homes that were more and more appropriate for us. And I didn't even know what I wanted at the beginning, but then as we were seeing homes more and more, I tended to like them more and more. So you definitely had paid attention to it. So first of all, I really appreciate you taking that much detail into it and learning about us personally. But then also, how did you develop a process like that? Because we've talked to other people before, they're realtors, and they don't seem to have that keen eye for detail.
I think it goes back to some of my previous work life. When you're dealing with work, you are forced in some situations to think about the customer first. So like with my first couple of buyers, obviously that wasn't the situation. It was more of like a door opener. You didn't really understand what you were doing. And I think through the experiences of wasting everyone's time showing the wrong houses time and time again, it's at some point you got to realize, okay, I'm being very inefficient here. It's hurting myself because this is time I could be reinvesting into my business. It's also hurting my client's experience, which is going to jeopardize my ability to help them again, to do referrals, to be reviewed positively, all this and that. So for me, it was just thinking the client experience with every single person I was helping. And that was one of the things that clicked, right? I'm opening the door for these people and they're looking at the homes, and yet again, this isn't what we're looking for. So I got very particular with it, right? When we get to a house, give me a minute just for safety and to make the house show in its best condition. Let me go walk around real quick and turn on the lights, get the windows open, let's rock and roll. Okay, I'm going to step out. You guys take a look at the house, talk freely. I'm going to give myself a couple minutes out of the house so you guys can walk freely. When you guys get done, no rush, I'll just meet you in the kitchen. And then, yeah, there are those targeted questions, right? And so it was, again, so that we could just, I wanted to get you into your house as fast as possible, knowing that the longer it took, the more exhausted you guys were going to get, and the less excited you were probably going to be about finding that house for you, right?
So I guess when we had this process, I was actually surprised at how quickly, in general, like
it was
things
crazy.
will go, right? Is that
Yeah.
the average for when you work with clients, or is it typically a really long range of people wanting to go a little slower in the looking and the searching process, especially with like Zillow and Redfin? How has those apps kind of changed or helped?
That is an incredibly loaded question. So a couple things with
Yeah.
that one. Yeah. I think the first thing is your quick of an experience the typical experience? I think the quick answer is no. So I'll have some clients, I mean, we'll go look at 2-3 homes. Other clients, we might look at 20 or 30 homes. It's just a matter, every buyer's expectation is going to be different, right? And one of those expectations are, I don't care if it's a 10 out of 10 home you show me first. I expect to see 5 homes so that I make sure that this was the right home in the end, right? For you guys, you guys are very forthcoming with the fact, like, hey, dude, we're not super picky here. We just need this, and this done. If you can figure this out, then let's go. And the first couple of homes, we refined that a bit more because obviously it's not going to be that wide of a net. But yeah, I mean, you guys were definitely a different type of buyer than I typically see. All right. So thank you for being amazing buyers. Not to say that the longer tenured buyers are by any means bad. But yeah, so is it usually that quick? No. To answer your other question about how Zillow, truly, like these other tech companies have helped. So they've introduced tools to just help me provide a better experience for my buyers, right? I think we have to, now being a business owner, I have to also understand that that's not where it ends for them. So they have other thoughts on how they could become a more profitable organization, not just create tools to help me. So I look at Zillow and some of these other apps in a different light as a business owner and kind of what they're doing to the industry. So
What have you felt or thought about what they have done to the industry?
I think the good is that they provided the tools that I think the buyers of today and tomorrow are begging for. You know, I one of my best friends, he constantly talks to me about a future where it should be as easy as clicking a button to buy a home, right? And so there are many aspects of the home buying journey that have become more efficient thanks to some of these apps. That's amazing. However, you know, there's a world that they see very similar to like a travel agent. So, you know, a good travel agent right now? Probably not, because they're not in existence that often. And so it's unfortunate because that industry came under attack due to advancements in technology that didn't just end in making the travel agent and their clients' worlds better. They actually replaced the travel agent. And so I guess I would ask you, do you see a world where there's no real estate agent as a part of a real estate transaction?
I don't really know because I don't know enough about how that functions.
Yeah.
I really do like having the personal touch on things, and I've learned more and more that sometimes businesses that people think is more of a commodity, it's really not. So that's another thing that has kind of opened my eyes, especially after doing this podcast and talking to all the people that we've met, is you learn that there's still like excellence within all the different industries. You don't want that to go away because that will be worse for future buyers whether they know it or not. So
Yeah.
then, just like you said with the travel agent thing, if you don't have someone helping you through that process, planning this amazing trip, you could probably go on some website and they'll, you know, give you a hotel in Chicago where it's possibly run by the Russian mafia, which is actually
It's a true.
Whoa.
It's a
Which
kind
is-
of a
Oh,
true
this
story.
so there things like that do happen, and you
Yeah.
show up, and then they have a folding table that's smaller than this one with a laptop on it, and then that's who you rent your room from in a hotel, and then they disappear.
That was
throughout
from
the
a
day.
very popular travel
This
website
sounds
too.
like an incredible story, and I don't know if we have time today, but I really want to hear this.
Yeah,
at
we'll
some
have to tell you about it sometime.
point.
But that, we just booked that through a website. But if it was
Yeah.
somebody that we had an actual travel agent, I feel like they would have, picked that up a little bit. Like, hey, that they don't really have, they have a mobile office, but they only set it up
Yeah.
in the lobby of the hotel when they're checking you in.
Oh,
So
God.
that was, yeah. But it was not a bad stay overall,
Yeah.
I guess. But it was still pretty sketchy feeling the whole time that you're there. It was a little weird. But yeah, I think I think a lot of things are getting lost with technology too. I think it's hurting a lot of industries, and the people that are the consumers of it don't even know that it's actually making their experience worse, and then they just assume that that's how everything is after that point.
Yep.
So it's too bad. I feel like a lot's going to get lost with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for skills, you develop your career and your skill set for a specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's real estate, you're learning computer science, or you're a physician, you're a physical therapist, whatever that may be, and you're even like hairdresser, right? There's things that it looks easy on YouTube and you can go do it, and then once you actually try it, you're like, well, it's probably not the best haircut you can ever get. Like, that's why you have a professional that you go to who has spent years of training. So I think that's something that I just become more appreciative of, especially as we do this podcast and do other things that we're like, all right, probably not good at repairing cars. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of skill set with that.
Yep. The question becomes, so like, over these next few years, easily, and it's actually already been the case, the generation that has really taken over the majority of home buying, specifically first-time home buying, are the millennials. And so, for me, when I talk about these tech companies, I have to think about the millennial generation, what's most important to them, right? When in their consumer decisions, a lot of times it's looking for that convenience. And so we talk about that. We have these old soul mentalities where it's like, no, we appreciate the art, the skills, the knowledge that you just can't get with the click of a button. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens with the industry. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of real estate agents that were the door openers, the ones that weren't embracing technology in their business. They're gonna have an uphill battle, right? They'll still have their friends and family, but as far as like really growing a business, I think there's going to be some challenges there because more and more technology is going to get in front of their clients. And I think for the millennial real estate agent or those that have a lot of them, they really need to start embracing that now and figure out ways to create tools that can match along with Zillow and the others.
It's going to be interesting to see how that evolves for sure.
Yeah.
But I do feel sad for losing that human touch for a lot of things too. And as far as the haircut thing goes, she actually cuts my hair and did learn on YouTube how to do
That's
that.
crazy.
So that was that was a good example.
Which I should just shout out to George and be like, sorry, man. I know that we just give him haircuts, but he deserves a better haircut.
Crazy. So I cut my own hair, and I totally get what you mean, though, because when I got something big I got to go do, I'm not getting the shears on my head. I'm going to go see my friend Jose, who's just going to absolutely take care of me and make me feel like $1 million, right? So I totally get that, yeah.
Yeah, and I used to cut my own hair too until Erica started cutting my hair.
Until she could help, yeah.
She's like, your hair looks terrible.
I'm
sure
back.
I could do a better job. Yeah. Like, how do you cut the back of your hair?
Right.
So what actually brought you to Vegas then?
I came to Vegas in June of '97. My dad, air traffic controller in the Air Force, so he actually got stationed out in Nellis Air Force Base. So first we were at March Air Force Base in Riverside, California. Then we got moved to McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. And about 8 years later, we came out here to Vegas. And I've been here ever since. I haven't left the city.
So what do you do to spend your time in Vegas when you're not working?
Now, man, my wife is probably like watching this laughing. Like, oh, not working. That's funny. Well, tell me when that happens. Just kidding, babe. So I hang out with my daughter and my wife. It's probably my favorite pastime. Growing up, I used to watch sports. Well, I still do. Watch sports, watch wrestling, play video games. And I would say watching wrestling and playing video games probably don't have time for much anymore. So I'll still get my sports in if I'm not hanging out with my wife and daughter. Yeah. Go Packers, by the way.
And is there anything else in Vegas that you have noticed that the city has to offer that maybe outsiders are not familiar with?
Very much. In fact, I'm super excited about digging more into this, which is the hiking and outdoors. So I just got back from a trip to Hawaii, and we brought a backpack that I could hold my 2-year-old daughter in on my back. And so we were able to hike on a 4-mile journey, and it was beautiful and amazing. And it just made me remember, like, I used to go hiking at Red Rock, Mount Charleston all the time, and I just stopped doing that. So we're, like, within a 2-hour drive of some amazing trails, and I just haven't done enough of it.
Oh yeah, the outdoor stuff out here was probably one of the biggest surprises to me when we first moved here. That and how amazing the food is. I know we bring that up quite often on the show, but it really is something that people are surprised about when they get here.
Oh yeah. Vegas has definitely become quite the eatery. Like there's places known for pizza. I think we're becoming one of those cities there too.
Really known for pizza?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, one of my buddies is a food critic in town actually, and so he took me to. Can I give a shout out?
Yeah.
Metro Pizza in the northwest part of town, one of the best pizza spots in town.
Huh, Metro Pizza.
Metro Pizza. It's off of like Sky Point. Like when you get off the 215 on the north side, when you get off at 215 and at Sky Point, you'll pass the Target and you'll see this Metro. It's awesome. I got to meet the pizza maker, the chef. He's a really cool dude, and it was just incredible food. So, yeah.
Excellent. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
So, within your industry, I'm sure there are a lot of things that come up that people would not know that it's a thing or that it exists. What are some of those things that, especially either if someone's getting into being a realtor themselves, or if someone's on our side and they're the actual buyer, what are some common things that people either don't know or make mistakes of?
Man, that was a good one. That was a good question. I think for working in the business, there's not enough thought put into the fact that you need to be, like, your job is lead generation when you're working in real estate. What you see on HGTV and the idea of holding your clipboard or iPad showing homes and talking about properties, that only happens when you actually have clients to share that experience with. And not a lot of people come into this business understanding that you have to generate those relationships or at least deepen them. So, for me, I had already had several years experience of cold calling. I've been in the city I'm selling real estate in for 20 years. So I came into this business with a lot of relationships. Some people, they just moved to Vegas 6 months ago and they said, let me start a business in real estate. And they don't have the relationships, but they're not willing to go and create them. So how are you going to create those experiences? So I think that's the number one problem is for the real estate, the reason why you have such a high failure rate is because people either don't know how or they're not willing to do the activities to go and create the relationships. On your guys' side of the fence, I think with buying a house right now, for buying a house, I think the first thing is not understanding what the search, or not having a very effective walking through of what the searching process should look like. So if you're kind of released to the wild with what's available on the different home searching apps, it could be a lot, and you also might not know what to search for, or you're just very emotional and there's very little logic put into your home searching process. So for me, I like to break it down to 3 conversations with my people. Hey, listen, when you're creating your home searching list, what are your must-haves, your nice-to-haves, and the things that don't matter to you? And literally draw out all 3 of those columns. Because in a market like today where we're dealing with historically low levels of inventory, it's going to be very hard for you to find a 10 out of 10 home. And if buying a house is very important to you and you get back to that reason, don't let a lack of 10 out of 10 be the reason you're not buying a house, right? Figure out where you're willing to compromise and find that 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. So that's for buying a house. And I think for selling a house, it would be careful for some of these instant cash offer programs that are now becoming more and more prevalent out there in the world. So you'll have mailers from all types of companies. Some of the companies we've already talked about, some other smaller type companies, where they're offering you these cash offers. And when you look at it at face value, even the cash offer amount itself is very close to the value of what you think your home is worth. And so, of course, like, I don't have to do showings. I don't have to put this house on the market. I don't have to go through the repair process, the appraisal. I don't have to go through all the tedious nature of selling a home, and I could just close in 14 days or whenever I'd like. It sounds great, but what people don't realize when they read through the fine print of some of those offers, there's typically service charges that can range anywhere from 10 to 20%. Right. So you just got to be careful for that. When the transaction closes, they don't, or when the transaction actually commences, they don't realize what's happened, right? And they're already too deep to really back out.
So how is that process of selling the house in terms of stress level? Is that, would you say, about equal to buying the house because you're either trying to get rid of some type of property, or is it kind of a mixture of things?
That's interesting. I don't know if I would say one is more stressful than the other. I think it's like different types of stress, right? And getting married and getting divorced, like, it's not like one. I don't know if one's more stressful than the other. I've never been divorced, but I feel like there's just big stresses with either one. So for me, selling a house, the different stresses there are, so let's put yourself in the mindset. You literally have the most valuable asset of all, and you are looking to cash out on it, get a return on that. That's super stressful in a variety of aspects. The biggest thing is you want to make sure you get the most money possible on it, right? So how do you get the most money possible? Well, there's everything that's required to actually getting the property prepped. There's also hiring the right person. And in the city of Vegas, you have 20,000 of us running around like chickens with our head cut off saying, pick me, pick me. And so that could be nerve wracking. Like, how do I know you're going to be the one that gets me the most money possible on this property? So I guess that's the thing, right? So process wise, that's where it starts. You got to find the right person that you can really entrust with the process of cashing out the most money on that home.
Now you have 20,000 realtors, or I mean, you can let's
Yeah.
say it as a guess.
Yeah.
So how is that working? Because you are in a sense sometimes a competitor, but you also are someone you have to work together with as a team because you're trying to finalize a transaction. What is that experience like with fellow colleagues?
Yeah, I think the first thing is I deal with transactions in a very win-win mindset, and that includes the agents on the other side as well. So even though it's 20,000, not as many as 20,000 are doing that level of doing production. So there's very likely a chance that when I'm interacting with the real estate agent, I'm probably going to see them on the other end of a deal, or they'll want my listing, I'll want their listing, like things like that, right? So if you and I went out there in the market, I might be able to leverage the relationships I've forged to help you guys get a house that you really like because, oh, that's listed by John Doe. I know John Doe. Joe and Eric, hang on for a second. I got you guys. And then I could leverage the relationship, right? So I think that's the first thing is acting with a win-win attitude. As far as competing while also leading a team, for one, my team, we're all building the same honeypot and the same organization, so I don't really compete with them. I think the bigger aspect is when I coach agents, right? I could also be going up against them. That's a very interesting conflict to manage through, right? For one, the situations, the clients, the prospects, the databases that they talk to me with, that's obviously theirs. I don't use the information from there to generate leads or things like that. However, I'm going to coach them to the best of their abilities. I probably overshare, which is one of my problems as a coach. I give them everything that I do because that's what my greatest mentors did for me. They gave me every tool. And so I was able to expedite a lot of my process. So I don't really see it as competitors. If we see each other going after the same client at some point in our life, great, let's go for it. And
What do you think about the current housing market in Vegas? We've had a lot of people share with us their different opinions, and it's drastically changed since we've bought a home 8 months ago, something like that. Coming up on a year.
yeah, coming up on your home anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the market has changed a lot. You're hearing more and more people anticipate that, with prices rising as much as they have, this just feels familiar in all the wrong ways, and as a result, is going to end how we saw it end in the past. So, I think the first thing is I didn't bring my crystal ball with me to this interview, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen. However, the way I handle this conversation is by telling people, listen, with any shifts in a market and as a result, like the pricing, because ultimately that's what people are monitoring is the price of the good, right? The home. If there's to be any shift, you have to go back to like what you learned in high school, the law of supply and demand. We have to see massive shifts in supply and demand if you're to see prices change. So back in 2006, 2007, the reason why prices came tumbling down was because there was a massive influx of supply and very little demand for that, right? So if there's no demand for all this supply, prices drop dramatically. The challenge that people face right now is we have very little supply and everybody and their children want to buy a home. And so for those that are predicting a housing crash, they have to understand the supply, first off, has to come from somewhere. And that's an issue in and of itself. So CNBC actually just reported this yesterday. There's so many different reasons why we don't have enough homes, and we probably won't for a long time. One of the biggest is that after the housing crash, home builders actually stopped building, right? They stopped building our future supply of homes. They stopped building because, one, there just wasn't construction labor, and two, it's kind of like post-traumatic stress disorder. They got their butts handed to them after the crash, and so as a result, it's like, okay, we got a little too greedy here. We got to be slow and very methodical in our approach when we're building. Let's make sure when we build, we sell. We build a little bit more, we sell, right? And so just to kind of put that picture a little clearer for you, leading up to the Great Recession, in Vegas alone, there was 10, 11, 12, 13,000 homes being built a year in Vegas. That number came tumbling down to 1,000 to 2,000 homes a year. for a long time. So now we're currently seeing about 4,000 to 5,000 homes being constructed in Vegas, but even that's not enough to meet the demand, right? So supply issues. We would have to see an influx of supply that would require either more houses being built, which haven't been happening for many years now, or people being in some sort of distress situation saying, I don't need my home. A bunch of people saying that, and all of a sudden inventory goes up. So that's already got the cards being dealt against it for if you're waiting for a housing crash. Then you want to talk about, okay, the demand, it would have to go away. And interest rates, I mean, I have a 2-year-old daughter. She'll probably never see interest rates as low as we're seeing right now. Right? And those interest rates have kept the demand here. And so as a result, we would seriously have to see a lot of these buyers go away. Now, if interest rates start to creep up, those buyers will probably go away, right? Or at least a big population of them will. But guess what other type of buyers coming in with every type of buyer going out? Your millennial buyers, right? So we talked about the population boom of them. There's so many millennials entering that home buying age right now that even if interest rates creep up, these millennials, they want a home. They're of that age where they're having kids, they're ready to rock and roll with their life. And so I just don't see it right now. I don't see a massive supply coming in. I don't see a massive purge of the demand. And so as a result, if you're asking for a prediction of the crash, it's hard to say yes right now. So does that answer it? I hope I wasn't tiptoeing around it.
That's good. That's a good way of explaining it, because I mean, obviously nobody knows the future, but if you can historically evaluate things and see like what created in the past, are the same conditions still viable and still around right now, then I think that's a good way of predicting things.
Yeah, and what created the past, like for those that have really looked into it, first off, I would recommend the movie, The Big Short. Have you guys seen it?
I have.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible, and it really tells the story of what happened. A lot of those predatory practices that were happening, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau was created so that the consumer wasn't subject to a lot of those bad lending practices, real estate agents doing dirty things. I mean, it was just across the board. So without getting too much into the weeds, can 2008 happen again? It would have to happen in a very different way with different factors involved, because those causes have just been mitigated.
Okay. Fair enough. And as far as when you're creating your company, you're saying that it takes some certain aspects of building a team. So how did you go about vetting people for your team? And like, how did you go about building it? How did you know like when you needed another person to help you out?
Yeah, so shout out to MREG, Mahabir Real Estate Group. I love my people. Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways that you would go about building a team. For specific to real estate, it's one of two things. One, you have the typical real estate agent who just has too much work on their plate and can't handle it on their own, so they have to hire people in to take care of some of the work so that they're not losing deals or the value proposition is not suffering, right? So you guys are going to feel that as well, right? We want to make sure that our consumers are happy with our experience. So that's one reason. Or the other reason is I'm looking for maybe another income channel within my business, and that is going to require me to bring people in that can do what I've done, replicate my success, and as a result, as I'm doing this, there's 5 more of me doing it, and we're making money still. For me, it was probably a little bit of both. There was an income opportunity here with people that I could really help understand how to do this business, people that either didn't experience a lot of success or were looking to belong to something bigger and better. And so as a result, let's be a part of a team. And yeah, at the time when I started the team, I was wearing a few different hats in the real estate business. In fact, I was wearing a couple of those hats while I was working with you. And so helping you guys and 5 other people in addition to some of the other hats, it's kind of hard to do so, right? And so I needed to pick who was I going to make happy. And with the ones that I still want to make happy but couldn't give that personal touch, I needed people I could trust. So that's why I built a team. Was for that.
And how do you go about selecting members for that? Like, do you look at skill set? Do you look at personality types? Or you meet them and you're like, you know what, you'd be good at this thing?
Yeah, I think there might be some real estate agents watching this that have teams or have had teams, and they'll laugh when they say, like, we all make the same mistake. It's like there's no answer to that question. We just let anybody into our team. And then you realize how much time it costs you and ultimately how much money it costs to have the wrong people in the organization. So, not typically do I want to bring super new people in, or at least at some point in my organization I didn't really want a lot of newer people because there was a time investment required there to teach them that I just didn't want to discount. But I also don't want super seasoned people because just as much time that's required to teach, I also don't have the time to spend to break bad habits. So I look for those individuals that maybe they obviously have the grit, they are goal oriented, and they are willing to do what's needed around lead generation to really find deals. And if they are willing to learn how to feed themselves through my teaching, then I will also feed them as well. So that's kind of how I selected it.
Excellent.
What would you describe as a bad habit in like real estate? Because I can think about as physical therapists, there are things like manual skills or maybe like ways that people think about things, and that's like, okay, like it's perhaps a bad habit. So what would be an example of that in the real estate world?
The biggest problem would probably be not using a calendar. That is the worst habit. So I've seen people like, if this meeting today was not on my calendar, you would have probably texted me about now saying, dude, where are you? I follow my calendar religiously. And so I see a lot of agents, they'll miss appointments, they'll miss trainings, whatever it may be, because it's not showing up on their calendar. Or they're very disorganized with what they're focusing on because they're not using a calendar, right? They act off of their emotion. This feels important to me today. Making a really nice business card feels right. And there's 20 other things your business needs, right? So I think that's the biggest. And if more real estate agents just use the calendar religiously, we would probably have a lot less of a dropout as well. Yeah.
Wow, that's not something I would have expected for an answer, actually.
Oh, there you go. Cool.
Now that you have this team in place,
Yeah.
how do you view leadership and teaching them and making sure that they're putting stuff on their calendar and learning the things that you want them to learn?
You know, that was one of the biggest reasons why I actually started the team. The real estate industry as a whole, something I've noticed, the real estate industry doesn't do a good job of teaching anything. Like what you learn in real estate school, and I'm sorry for all the real estate schools that might be listening or watching, they don't teach you how to be a real estate agent. So you pass that, you get picked up by your collar, dropped into whatever brokerage, and say good luck. And that could be a scary thing for consumers, especially. Like you're then trusting that person to help you, right? So, but then there's like, okay, so what do they teach you? There's very little training on managing a transaction, managing a database, finding deals, closing deals, and definitely very little, if any, training on leading. So I think that's where my big focus is I want to introduce things that I've learned, thankfully, from my background to really build a culture and organization. I think leading a real estate team, the first thing is you have to have systems in mind. Like you're always thinking about systems, because the minute you make people being a part of your team or following your leadership about you and not about your systems, well, you will have no time for anything else. And there's 101 hats I have to wear, or 101 things that our business needs to do. I can't have them all coming to me for 101 things, right? I have to have them adopt a system. So that's constantly what I'm thinking about as a leader for an organization. What systems do we need that, one, saves me time and gives the people what they need so that they can make more money in the business?
It's interesting that you mentioned about the schooling. And I guess I have realized as we talk to other professionals that most schools don't teach you, but just fine, because there's a time and place for when you are creating that education. That's where you're kind of understanding what the foundation is. And then as you go and work, you learn all the things of how to integrate those things.
Yeah.
So I could see where that's the fault of, or not anybody's fault. It's just as you learn more, you are able to integrate those experiences. And I think the same thing with, like, I've heard on multiple podcasts, like, oh, they didn't teach you that in school. Like, definitely did not. But that's how you continuously evolve to be a lifelong learner, if you will.
That's right. If you're using the stuff you learned from real estate school, it's because you're in front of a judge, and God help your soul at that point.
Now, you also teach seminars as well.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about those.
So I look at it as my clients include buyers of real estate, sellers of real estate, investors of real estate, and then people who work in real estate. So I do seminars for home buyers, home sellers, investors, and then, of course, different classes around running a real estate business, whether it's just finding your deals, to following up with your people, to using technology, to ultimately managing your transactions effectively. So I have a huge passion for teaching. In fact, like if you talk about long-term goals, if that is all I could do is just stand in front of rooms and teach hundreds of people how to do something, that is super fulfilling for me. Right, so.
That's one thing that we didn't get a touch on is the real estate investment world.
Yeah.
You want to tell us more about maybe the difference? We talked about buying, selling. What about the investment property?
Yeah, you just have to, I think for one, I was introduced to, like really introduced to the world of real estate investing through a great friend of mine by the name of Steve Bland. Amazing, amazing individual. And he really helped me think about, like, so this might resonate with you all, in that as a result of me choosing to work in real estate, I don't have a retirement plan anymore. Like, there's no pension 401k, so I have to build that fund. And he taught me, why not build it through the product that you're selling in real estate? And then I got to really understand, like, what I could do with real estate investing, create passive income now that supplements income so that I could do more with my time to ultimately creating this fund that I can hand off to my family and create whatever legacy with. So for those individuals that want to get into real estate investing, you have to think about your long-term goals first. What are you investing for? Is it to create monthly passive income, or is it to create a massive fund that you could ultimately cash in at some point in your life? And then there's different strategies for how to bring that to life, whether it's flipping or holding. And there's 101 books on how to do that. I would recommend. Can I recommend it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would recommend the Bigger Pockets podcast for those individuals that are really looking into that. It's an amazing podcast and one that goes into a lot of the different areas around investing. And they would do a far better job of explaining it in a short amount of time than I could today. Yeah.
Excellent. And what's something that you've learned that you wish you knew sooner?
Joe, you got me. You got me, Joe. What's something you learned that you wish you would have known sooner?
This can apply to life. It can apply to
I wish, Joe. Oh man, this one just hit me like a ton of bricks once I realized the answer. I wish I would have known the power of saying no, and how much more money I would have I would have made up to this point by being more comfortable telling people no than telling people yes. So, the long story short is I have a very servant mindset. I'm of I'm a typical example of set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, or at least that's been the case for many, many years. And so I've realized that when people need something, I say yes, I say yes, I say yes. And when I'm saying yes to this individual, I've said no to many other things. To the point where it became very difficult for a long amount of time for me to manage all these different hats that people were expecting me to wear. And when I'm with somebody, I'm 100% present with you in that moment. And the unfortunate thing is then that sets an expectation, right, for how our relationship will be for the rest of our time. And so it gets hard because then they're looking for more and more and more. So I think it's a little bit about after the three of us actually started working together, when I was having all these different hats and I just had a great experience with you guys and there was a couple other clients, but then there was other ways where I wasn't living up to the bill, right? I wasn't being the most present husband. I wasn't being the most loving father, and those things just wasn't sitting with me. So I wish somebody would have slapped me upside the head much sooner and said, like, you need to start telling people no because you're letting people down. The challenge for that was either I wasn't listening to the feedback or the feedback wasn't being given to me. So I needed to reflect on what was going on in my life, and through that reflection I realized I needed to say no.
Solid advice. I feel like a lot of that it's hard to come to that realization sometimes too. It just has to get to this point where it's overwhelming, and then you realize, okay, something needs to change.
It's hard for me because, like, telling you no, I'm like letting you down. I can't do that to you, Erica. So I'll just tell you yes, and I'll figure out the rest of it. And that just doesn't work when you've done that 20 times in a day. And it's like, okay, well, now it's time to turn it off. Oh, wait, it's 11 o'clock and everybody's gone to bed. Oh, I guess I'll have 2 more hours of work then, right? You burn the candle at both ends really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what's something you've been working on, whether it's professionally, personally, mentally, physically, that you're excited about?
Being a more it goes hand in hand with that last question. It is being a more present individual, and my family wants to go to the mountains. Recently, we just got back from Hawaii. Being present in Hawaii, being with my child when I'm home, being with my family at Mount Charleston when we're going there this weekend. It's just making sure that they know I'm here with them, and work will still be there, right? I understand my responsibilities when it comes to leading a team, helping people buy and sell homes, and there might be some times where you have to choose. Are you going to continue to do that 100% around the clock, or there are going to be times where you're going to be present for your family? So I'm really excited about that kind of growth journey I'm going on, where my life for many, many days, I've dedicated almost all of the day to professional Dan, and it's time I start really looking at who am I personally for the people that look to me most.
And how can people find you?
I'm on YouTube. It's actually under my team name, Mahabir Real Estate Group. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Dan Mahabir. And then, of course, you could always email me, daniel@mahabirreg.com.
All right. We'll put all your information in the show notes, too, for the listeners, make it a little bit easier for them as well.
Beautiful.
And we really appreciate you coming on the show. Also, we appreciate the job that you did helping us sell or buy our home. Or I guess, we bought from someone else. But that was definitely a process that I was not wanting to do. It's kind of like going to the dentist. You're like, I don't really want to do this type thing. But you actually made it enjoyable. I looked forward to it. So when we would come meet you for the houses, I was excited to see what you had after, the first visitor. So we trusted you and then saw that you were definitely doing the best you could by us. And I think that we were happy to go see the new homes that you were showing us. So we really appreciate that, making that a good experience.
Beautiful. That's amazing. Thank you so much. That means more to me than I could tell. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
We'd like to thank you for listening to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the time with our guests as much as we did. It would help us out so much if you could share, subscribe, or review our podcast or any combination of the three. Thanks again, and remember to take care of yourself.